Then I asked the Lord, what benefits you? And he said, Hello, 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 everyone. Good day.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. Great to have
Amazing.
you here.
It's great to have you again. This is the BMC series, and I'm glad that you're here. As usual, I'm Niyi, and I've got Tofumi, my associate, here with me. It's a lovely day, isn't it, Tofumi?
It is. The weather here is not too great right now, but I'm sure it'll get better.
Yeah, great, great, great. So we're really excited about today. We're really pumped up. The reviews we got from the first day, which was last week Thursday, when I was here with Edin Owonka, was sort of mind blowing. We talked about emotions, and the line that's just stuck to my mind was when Eden said that. Any theology, any process, any teaching, anything whatsoever that absolves you of personal responsibility is a fraud. That sort of struck my mind. I was like, yes, that is legit. And it's really been amazing, the impact that we're making already in people's lives. So I'm glad that you're all here, and today is going to be greater.
Yes, it
Absolutely.
is. I think that line was the highlight for almost everyone.
Correct. Yes. 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 So, but today is going to be wonderfully amazing. And today, myself, with Pastor Dami Oluwatoyinbo, we're going to be looking at thoughts. And I think, I've just been, yesterday I was just ruminating on this and thinking about thoughts. And I was like, wow, this is going to be life changing. This is going to be life changing. And there are a few things that I've learned about thoughts, from the neurobiology of thoughts to the psychology of thoughts, and how that can merge with the spirituality of thoughts, and how we can actually harness the power of our thoughts to change our lives, which is what we're here for. So it's going to be powerful today. So, Tofumi, I'll allow you to read Pastor Dami's bio, and we'll bring him on, and then we'll go. Great.
Awesome. Excuse me. So Damilola Oluwatoyinbo is a blend of gifts and grace, a dynamic speaker, insightful writer, personal transformation expert, corporate trainer, prolific songwriter, and spiritual leader. He is on a mission to empower people to rise and reign as kings. His passion is to change the world by raising kingdom influencers through transformational trainings and the timeless messages he delivers in a captivating oratorical style. He occupies a unique space as he masterfully speaks to the sacred and secular systems with uncommon wisdom. As a professional speaker and trainer, he designs and delivers top quality and high impact trainings that elevate productivity. He has created over 20 online programs and published 6 books, including Just Do It, Seize the Moment, Good to Go New Year Guide, and Life Lessons from Football. Dami is the pastor of kings. In 2017, he began to raise kingdom influences in nations, generations, and systems, a vibrant community with operations spanning a local church, with a global vision as well as charities and outreaches. His ministrations are marked by uplifting insights, prophetic precision, divine wisdom, spontaneous worship, and transformational power. He has also released a number of uplifting songs, including I'm Not Alone and the Grace Favor Chant. His songs have infused hope and encouragement in the hearts of tens of thousands of people through television and the internet. Widely celebrated for his oratorical presentations and inspirational leadership, he is a recipient of several awards and recognitions. Over the last decade, he has shared his solutions and strategies for growth with millions of people in Africa, Europe, the Middle East, touching the hearts of both young and old through live presentations, television, radio, print media, and the internet. A mentor to many emerging spiritual and business leaders, he is widely celebrated as one of the most inspiring voices of his generation, and he is in increasing demand at conferences, seminars, workshops, and church events. Dami is happily married to his best friend and teammate, the delectable Toju. They are blessed with 2 adorable sons, Carmen and Ronald, and they are fulfilling their life's mission together. So everybody, please help me welcome Pastor Dami.
Wow, wow, wow,
Thank
wow. Welcome
you. Thanks.
so much. We're glad
Thanks
to
so
have
much.
you here.
It is great to be here. Dr. Fumi, thank you so much for the very beautiful introduction. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, thank you so much for the gift that you are. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a blessing to your generation. And I'm not saying this to project your self-image or to flatter you. You are a big blessing, and I know you know that. You understand how much of a blessing you are, to this generation. And I just thank God that you've made yourself available for this.
I'm honored, Doc. I love and appreciate you, and I'm grateful that God caused our paths to cross, and I celebrate you massively as well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, it's amazing, amazing, and amazing. Well, before we go in, let's just say a word of prayer, and then we'll just dig right into our teaching for our conversation for today. Father, we thank you for this day. We bless you. We pray that you will give us insight, you'll give us understanding, and you'll help us to translate the knowledge, the insight, and understanding into actionable steps that will transform our lives. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen.
Great. Wonderful. Great to have you here again. As I said, last week was amazing with Eden, and I'm just trusting God that today we're going to go harder, to a greater place, and that we will be able to break this whole, mysterious phenomenon. I use that word called thought. I just want to get your initial impressions about the topic, and before we start.
I feel like, okay, so first of all, let me say that this series is amazing. I really love it because it's a breath of fresh air. Let me use that as an expression, right? And I was saying to you yesterday or 2 days ago that you're occupying a very unique space, particularly in our demographic, where a lot of things may have been so tied down on certain principles or certain supernatural activities, right? But you're sort of like bringing in this fresh perspective of, okay, you know what, let's check out how the mind really works, how the brain really works, and how these things impact our lives practically. Typically, most people want to absolve themselves of responsibility. Like, okay, my village people are after me, circumstances and situations. Let me jump up 7 times and shout amen 3 times. Now, I'm not despising prophetic actions. You see that? But I'm saying that there is the God who created miracles, also the God that gave us our brains, our minds, and all. So I'm super excited about the series, number one. Number two, I love the fact that because you realize, you're very clinical, you're a surgeon. So because you realize that these things are loaded and so powerful, you've broken them down over a period of, is it 9 weeks or 10 weeks?
8 weeks, 8 weeks.
8 weeks, right? So I really love that as well. And I love the fact that we have, I think, maybe another 45 minutes to talk about thoughts. But the truth is we are not going to exhaust thoughts. Why? Because the interesting thing about thoughts is that thoughts grow the more you pay attention to them. So an attempt to unpack or unravel the depths behind thoughts and how they impact our lives is like you're watering something that you claim to be operating. So I'm excited about it, but the part of me is like, okay, you know what? The time is not going to be enough, right?
Absolutely. It's. I really don't know how we can sort of fully exhaust this, but we'll try as much as possible. We will, if with your permission, just let me know when I know you've got other engagements. We will be able to stretch it for an hour, 50 minutes, if depending on how time allows it. But before I get you, to give us sort of some further to go deeper into your sort of thoughts about thought. I want to just sort of lay a foundation from a neurobiologic and cognitive point of view, in terms of the science of thoughts. And there are 2 key principles for everyone who is watching right now. There are 2 key features of thoughts that I want to just set up as a foundation so that we can now sort of dive deep into this whole part of our mind. 2 key things about thought that I want to say. Number one, thought is independent of stimulus. Thought is independent of external stimulus. And number 2, thought is limitless. Now, what do I mean by thought is independent of stimulus? The best way to explain this is by comparing thought and perception. Next week, we're going to be having Bankole Williams, and Bankole Williams will be speaking to us about perception. Okay. And I thought sometimes the best way to define something is by contrasting it with what it is not. All right. Now, thought versus perception. All right. Now, I'm going to just do a quick I'm going to ask you to do a quick exercise. Can everyone watching me right now, can you think about something, or let me say, think about a phone, a mobile phone. Just think, wherever you are right now, just think about a mobile phone. And if you're bold enough, can you just put in the comments, let me see what you're thinking about. Let me see just describe the kind of mobile phone, if you can be specific, the color, the make, Can somebody do that? Yes. Think about a mobile phone and let me know exactly what whether you're on Facebook, on YouTube, what kind of mobile phone you're thinking about, the smartphone, could it be the old flip phones, whatever comes to your mind. Just think about it and put it out there. Do we have any comments yet? Still waiting for a few comments. Come on, guys. Put up something. Think about a mobile phone and put it up there. So for me, do you want to check in the back room to see whether we have a... Oh, yeah. Well, so we're getting some comments here. Yeah. So somebody said, oh, yeah, good. The comments are coming through. Someone said black Samsung J6. I don't know what the black Samsung J6 looks like. Someone said Samsung S21, iPhone 12, Techno, Y, Y Gold, Samsung S20, Red Techno, iPhone 12, Samsung 21. So you're already thinking about it. You're already thinking about a phone just by giving you that instruction. Now, look at this phone here. This is an old phone of mine. This is actually an iPhone 11, iPhone 10, actually, an iPhone 10. I think I've got an iPhone 12 somewhere here as well. Okay, this is an iPhone 12. All right. So these are two mobile phones. Now, the difference between your thinking and your perceiving is contact. Now, when I asked you to think about the phone, you've not seen the phone. Maybe you don't have a phone there. Maybe you're actually using a phone. I don't know. But you thought about the phone independent of contact. But now, when I ask you to look at this iPhone 10, you're perceiving it. Perception requires contact. Perception requires contact with your awareness. So when something comes into the sphere of your awareness, you perceive it. Now we can talk about how we can improve our perception so that we can pick things that come into our world faster than a lot of other people pick it, whether through our senses or through the energy that is around us. Whether we can read people, read their faces, read their emotions, and pick stuff. That's perception. But you don't need contact with an object in order for you to think about it. You don't need to see an apple before you think about it. There is no need for a direct contact or connection between the object of your thought and the thought itself. So perception is dependent on your environment, but thought is not dependent on your environment. You can think of an object, even if it's shrouded in mystery or it's hidden in a soundproof dark room, you can still think about it. So the faculty of thought can be used in every situation. While perception is stimulus dependent, thought is completely independent. So I wrote this down. Number one, you can think about an object in their absence or a person. You can think about events that have not yet occurred. You can think about events that would never occur. You know, when I was young, I used to think and just imagine myself being the younger brother of a footballer, a popular Nigerian footballer, JJ Okocha. I loved him so much. And I would just daydream and imagine I was his younger brother. That was my thought. It would never happen. We don't have the same genetic makeup. We're not from the same family. So understand that thoughts can occur without contact. And at every single person, the other point I want to make is that every single person has a capacity for thought. It's a universal thing that helps us. All right. So the other point I want to quickly make here, still about thoughts, is that we need to start to live at a higher level of thought processing than perception.
Come on.
All right. Now, I put this down there. Creatures that have the capacity for thought can control the environment in a way that creatures that only rely on perception cannot. Because remember, for perception, you need contact with something. You need to see the signs. With thought, you don't need to see any sign for you to, start acting or meddling on an object or an idea. Let me give you a very good example. A predator with perception can detect a prey when the prey is around. They can sniff it out. You know, a wolf can smell sheep 2 kilometers away just with their sense of smell. That's perception. They know when prey is around. They can perceive a prey. But listen, a predator with thought can think about the prey, expect the prey, attract the prey, and plan for their arrival.
Come on.
A predator with perception can only act when they sense. A predator with thought can actually think, expect, attract, and plan for their arrival. A very good example I'll give you. I've been watching David Attenborough recently, or some of his documentaries. You know, in the Serengeti, or the Mara River in Kenya, where you get these crocs hiding in water, and you have these zebras and wildebeest trying to cross the river. You know, the smartest croc is the croc that can think ahead of time, position themselves properly at the bank of the river, not waiting to hear the sound of the hoofs. A lot of people are waiting to hear the sound of the hoofs before the work. But you see, when you're a man of thought, you don't need contact. You don't need to see any sign. You don't need to hear or perceive anything, because there's a creative power in your faculty, in that faculty of your mind, that allows you to be able to bring to life things that are not already existing. That's what leads me to the second point, that thought is limitless. Whereas our perception is limited by range, thought is practically limitless. Look at our perception. We cannot see things that are too small. We can't see in the infrared or the ultraviolet. We can't. Bats can do that. Some dogs can do that. There are some sounds we cannot hear. If the pitch is so high, we can't hear it. All right, we can detect some odors. That's our perception. Our perception is limited. It doesn't matter how blessed you are, how genetically wired you are, how well trained you are in terms of perception, which is important. I'm not downgrading perception. Next week, we're going to talk about perception. How can you nurse your perception, and how can you understand your world, and how can you read people, and how can you get that understanding of how divine energy works and all that. We'll talk about that. But you see, all of that is limited to contact. Something has to come within your sphere of influence for you to perceive it. But for thoughts are limitless. You can think about things that are too small. You can think about atoms. Like I can stay here and think about electrons and just imagine them. All right. You can think about things that are huge, the galaxies, even though you've never left this planet. You can think about planets that are far away, like Mars, and you can think about your own very body, your brain, which is so close to you. Nothing is closer to you than your very brain. You can think about objects that are far, objects that are near. You can think about things in the past. If you're a Christian, the death and resurrection of Jesus, you can still think about that, even though it's over 2,000 years ago. And you can think about future events that have not even happened. You can think about the Olympics that will happen this year. All right. So your thoughts are limitless. One final point while laying this foundation, this is just a foundation, is that the difference between a man and a child when it comes to thought. I want to just give you this, and this is a psychological sort of sort of foundation for thoughts, is that a child cannot disengage the focus of their thought from their perception. I'll explain that to you. If you want to know what a child is thinking, read their face. That's how we understand animals. That's how we humans study chimpanzees. We don't go into their minds to see what the chimpanzee is thinking, but we look at their behavior, their interaction, their perception, what they're seeing. If you want to know your baby, if you've ever had a baby, you want to know whether the baby is happy with you. Look, you make eye contact with them, they smile. They want to grab what you're holding. We learn the thought pattern of a child through what their perception is focused on. All right. But for a man, for a mature person, you can't judge. I can be looking at you right now, and my mind is far away from you.
Yeah.
One striking feature of human thought is our ability to disengage our thought from our perception. And we have to take it beyond just the simple biology. We have to take it beyond living in the now. That even though you are living in this world and there's a lot going on around you, you don't allow that to cloud or limit the capacity of your thought, that you can raise your thinking beyond where you are. That you may be working a 9-to-5 job that you hate, but you can elevate the dimensions of your thought processes and thought patterns beyond your perception. That you may be working with a horrible boss that makes you feel less than who you are, but that if you understand the limitless nature of your thoughts and you can unleash the power of your thoughts, you can create worlds that are beyond the current world you're existing in. All right. So I just want to state that I don't want to preach and go on preaching, but these are just basically, principles on thought, about the stimulus independent nature of thought and the limitless nature of thought, and a few other things. I'll go into the brain in more details. Don't worry, I've got my brain model here ever ready. Okay. But so Peter, I just thought I'd just lay that foundation before I let you go in talking more about thoughts and the creative power, and then I will come in from time to time so that we can just have this exchange. But what do you think about those points?
Big dog, man, that was more than a foundation. That was like a whole building. and I wish and I hope that people are really getting how powerful this is. So when he says something like the smartest crocodile, right, is the one that goes beyond perception, but has the ability to think, right, prepare for and draw in the prey. Because I think a lot in pictures and metaphors. When I'm thinking about the crocodile, I'm not thinking about the crocodile, I'm thinking about myself. And when I talk about the prey, I'm thinking about the dreams, the goals, the things that we actually want to have, the opportunities, right? So what happens ever so often in the business space and ministry, in life generally, is that people wait for contact, right? They wait for something to have started. They wait for maybe the lockdown before they go digital, right? Wait for the lockdown and then start moving their businesses online and all of that. That's perception. So when they announce the lockdown, people perceive that business is going to change, the landscape is going to change. How do we digitize what we're doing? But thought is, wow, with the rate of evolution of technology, of the digital platforms, I see that in 3 years or 5 years, artificial intelligence is going to take over. Chatbots are going to be the new customer service officers. We're going to have virtual skyscrapers. We're going to have Elon Musk cars. Now that's thinking. So even though I'm moving an electric car, even though I don't have 5G technology, I'm not living in a smart city. By the power of thought, I can actually anticipate and prepare. Now, what usually happens is that when perception begins to happen, you have limited time for preparation or possession. Limited time for preparation or possession. But thought can actually give you the advantage of speed, of time. So for me, that was so powerful. Just wanted to reiterate that and apply it a bit more, just in case somebody didn't get that. But thank you for laying the foundation, and I want to pick it up from the place of thought. So I tried to do some kind of study to what's the origin of the word thought. Now, the English word, the original English word for thought is actually a word pot, P-O-H-T. And I like the fact that it sounds like pot as in P-O-T, right? Because in a pot, you're literally cooking something, right? You're literally cooking something, or you are carrying or conveying something. Now, that original English word, right, pot, it means to conceive in the mind. So when we're talking about thoughts, you're talking about conceiving something. Now, just come with me. When you think about conceiving, what comes to mind? Conception. What comes to mind? Pregnancy. That means that every time we begin to muse on a thought, every time we begin to ponder on something, it's actually the art of mental conception, which means that we're becoming impregnated with something. So anytime I'm thinking, when I receive the thoughts, when I generate a thought or I receive a thought, I'll talk about different ways in which we engage thought later. What's happening is that we can, equate that to a man's seed. I believe everybody here is older than 18, right?
Yes.
That's a man's seed. So your mind is like a womb. It's like a woman's womb. Every thought is like a seed. Well, you see this now, it's possible for a seed to come into the woman's womb, but then gestation does not happen. She flushes it out with a morning after pill, or her body, she's not in that time of conception. Her body is not able to receive it at that time. And that's the same thing that happens with many people. You can receive a powerful thought, but the fact that you have a powerful thought does not mean gestation can happen. It does not mean reproduction is going to happen. It does not mean you're going to flesh it out. Now, Dr. Niyi mentioned something earlier, and he said that thoughts are limitless, right? But the infinitude of thought, or the power of thought, is not just in the thought in itself. It's about the degree of attention or concentration given to it. which means that somebody can be told, oh, Bitcoin, there are all kinds of blockchain technologies right now. It's a thought. So you think about Bitcoin, oh my God, $30,000 last week. It's a thought. And then it passes through your mind. You pay no attention to it. But somebody somewhere says, hey, this Bitcoin move, Bitcoin breakthrough was not passed me by. So he begins to think about it, engage it. That's a level of engagement. In other words, gestation has happened. Somebody goes to the point of investing in Bitcoin, right? Somebody else says, no, you know what? I'm going to have my own blockchain technology. I'm going to have my own platform where other people will invest, which means that when we're talking about the limitlessness of thought, it's not just about the inherent power of the thought, but the degree of attention, concentration, absorption, regurgitation, application that I bring into it. That is the same reason there are people who are watching this right now. A couple of scores of people are watching this right now, but not everybody is engaging this conversation at the same level of thought. So some people are engaging. Guess what? They have their notepads, their digital tabs, their stylus, their pens, and they're writing. Other people have big notebooks like this, and guess what they have? They have all these colored pens engaging the same conversation at a deeper level. Some other people are busy eating shawarma and fries, right? While engaging. While they're listening. So we're sharing the same thing, but the degree to which people are going to absorb it will be different. So please keep that in mind. Every time I am thinking, I'm conceiving. And the longer I stay on the thought and the stronger my attention is that I pay to that thought, the more intense the gestation period is. So if I'm going to use some scientific terms as well. So you have the seed, right? And when the seed of the man comes into the egg, so we say the spermatozoan, right? Right. And they say how many, I don't know, how many millions of spermatozoans are released in one moment. Like, is it hundreds of millions or something like that?
Hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions. And all of them have the ability to fertilize the egg, right? And this also tells me something, that sometimes the power of a thought is not just about the thought, it's about the readiness of the mind it's coming into. Because if you release the same qualitative seed into the matrix of the lady, when it's not her season to conceive, even though it's a powerful thought, nothing is going to happen. This is the reason. Maybe someday you wake up and you say to your wife or your husband, oh my God, I've got this great idea. And then your spouse says, what's the idea? And say, oh, so and so. And the person says, I told you about this thing 3 years ago now. I don't know if it's happened to you, Dr. Niyi.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now
because you don't allow it to sink.
The person is excited thinking it's a fresh idea, but you already gave that idea, but they were not in that season in their lives, right? They were not in that season. But let's assume that conception happens, and then from there you have what they call the zygote, which is a level of life or has a form of life. Now, in the zygote, you don't have the clear features of the baby yet. You don't have the appendages of the baby yet. You don't have the musculature, a frame of the baby yet. You don't have the central nervous system full-blown developed yet. It's a form of life, right? And if that zygote is brought into an external environment, so the harsh environment of our external world, it's not likely to survive, which also talks about the fact that not all thoughts can survive in all environments. Not every level of qualitative thinking can actually survive. Some environments are toxic, some environments are cynical, inimical, devastating, destructive, right? And then if you allow that zygote remain in the natural habitat, it begins to grow and grow and grow. And I believe they call it the embryo, right? The embryo, which has a higher manifestation of human life. And then if you allow the embryo grow and incubate, guess what you have? The fetus. And if it comes to full term, then you have, Doc, am I right on this?
Well, yes, you are really reminding me of obstetrics now. I wonder why you studied medicine too. Hey.
I didn't study medicine. I studied engineering, funny enough, right? So those are levels of thought. And the same way it is biologically, that's the same way it is mentally. That there are certain people who are thinking about what you're thinking about, but not on the same level to which or at which you're thinking about it. So that's very important. Now, how do thoughts originate, or how do we engage thoughts? So I think number one is that thoughts can be initiated. So for example, we had brain, mind, and change. And all of a sudden, that's a new level of thought in the learning space, right? At least much of Nigeria, much of Africa, in mainstream personal development. We've never really had, we've had stuff about mindset, about shift, about psychology and all. But now the neuroscience part of it, you know, what Dr. Niyi is introducing, it's beginning to spark up certain thoughts. It's an initiated thought for many of us, right? So maybe even if we glossed over some elements or some factors in neuroscience, for the first time, we're paying more attention to it. So thoughts can be initiated. Number two, thoughts can be imitated. And this happens through culture. So you might have heard the story before about a certain young lady who just got married. And every time she was trying to fry fish, what she would do is that she would get the fish, the whole fish, chop off the head and chop off the tail, put the trunk of the fish in the pot and fry it. And then one of those days, the husband came and said, why are you always cutting off the head of the fish and the tail of the fish? And so, you know what? That's just the way I do it now. That's just the way I do it. That's the way I do it. So, okay, but really, why do you do it? There must be a reason. So, well, I don't know, but that's how my mother used to do it when we were growing up. So she calls her mother and says, Mommy, why is it that when we're growing up, whenever you cook fry fish, you chop off the head and chop off the tail? And the mother said, I don't know. That's just the way I grew up seeing it. Right? So the mother called the grandmother and said, Mommy, why do you still cut the head and the tail of the fish before frying it? And the mother said, well, when we were growing up, what we had were all those small pots. So the whole fish couldn't fit into the pot. Now, generation later, so 3 generations later, we have an imitated thought that has become a lifestyle. And could it be possible that for some people here who are struggling financially or struggling maritally, maybe you speak to your wife a certain way, you speak to your husband a certain way, you don't even realize that it's an imitated thought, that your only models in marriage were maybe your parents, and you saw your father speak to your wife a certain way. And even though your wife is different from your mother in terms of personality, in terms of access, education level, exposure, demeanor, and all of that, the imitation of that thought is still ruling and governing your life. And that's a very important one. And then that brings me to the
before you go to the next one, what you just said is so profound. And there is actually a sort of neurobiologic basis for that as well. Wow. You see, our brains are practically designed to be reflexive and not to be, you know, the brain as an organ itself likes to be lazy, likes to just do things, you know, at a very low level. The brain, that's why it's always very difficult to study a new thing. Why it's difficult, especially when you are old enough to generate plasticity or to change your brain when you are older, because your brain just likes to cruise. And one of the easiest ways through which the brain does that is through imitation. That's why that's the whole process of group thinking, group thought. Why it's very easy to put a fake news there, a false idea, it will spread like wildfire, and you can get people to just think the way you do. That's why it's easy if you've been under somebody's ministration for a long time. Without imitating them, you talk like them, you preach like them, you pray like them, you talk like them. Have you seen that before? Where if you watch somebody enough, all right, you look like them. Even if you're not careful, you would even talk like your wife if you're married. You know, that's your brain at a reflexive level. It doesn't require deep thought. Okay, so it's actually a lower level of thought activation. Imitation is a lower level of. It is very easy to just follow the crowd and just, you know, keep repeating what trends and going in cycles. You know, and he had sons and daughters and he died. He had sons and daughters and he died until Enoch. Because that Enoch walked with God, you know, he elevated that level and said, you know, I'm not going to be thinking, going to work and doing the same, repeating the cycles. I just want to break out of this. I just thought I'll chip that in.
That is so powerful. And I'm happy that you're bringing the biological aspect to it, because it happens almost all the time. Let me give an example. So there was a day we're driving down a major, I think it was Third Mainland Bridge or another very major road in Nigeria, driving, and then we saw certain cars turning back, right? So the cars would make a U-turn like maybe about 100 meters away and then turn back. And guess what? The cars behind that cars, they're turning back. And then the cars behind those cars, they're turning back. So we found out, what's happening? Do you know what they said? We don't know, but that car was turning back. And that's what exactly. So this imitation thing you're talking about is actually one of the prisons in which most of us are caged, wherein we see certain opportunities and we're like, my uncle saw that and turned back. My father saw that and turned back. My big brother saw that and turned back. What makes me feel like I have what it takes to break the $1 million barrier? What makes me feel like I have the effrontery to dare to live outside the confines of my mental territory? What gives me the idea that I can actually be under? Because imitation, watch this, is a false sense of arrival. Imitation, a false sense of arrival. What that means is it makes me comfortable. It makes me feel like I'm doing something right, especially when I'm imitating somebody that I put on a certain pedestal. And I feel like this person is smart, accomplished, intelligent, not realizing that their success, their smartness, their creativity, their accomplishments were supposed to be templates for me upon which I will build a higher level. In fact, their own success, right, was supposed to be a seed for my own advancement. But because I feel more comfortable doing just what they've done, I do what they've done, and I think I'm successful. I do what they've done, I think. So number 3, which is the good thing about thoughts. So number 1, thoughts can be initiated. Number 2, thoughts can be imitated. Number 3, thoughts can be interrogated. So I can actually question my thoughts. And actually, the most accomplished people, they've learned to question their thoughts. Now, some of you might know one of the greatest kings of ancient Israel, David, shepherd boy, harpist, national singer, warrior, fine boy, and all of that. And David would say things like, "Why are you downcast, O my soul? Why are you disquieted within me?" He's interrogating his thoughts. Is interrogating his emotions as well. Is interrogating his internal environment. And many of us need to ask ourselves, why are you always afraid when it's time to write exams? When it's time to write I can, why do you feel I can't? When it's time to write ACCA, why do you say AC? See here? When it's time to write your MBBS, why you say umba, 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 umba? Right? You have to interrogate those thoughts, because sometimes we accept those thoughts. But see, can I ask you a question? If a stranger comes to the door of your house, knocks on the door of your house, do you just open the door without interrogation? No, you don't. So why is it that when questionable thoughts or strange ideas knock on the door of our minds, our subconscious, our hearts, we open the door? We open the door without asking for identification, without asking for origin, without asking for intent, without asking for purpose, without asking for, source, without asking for the ultimate ideal. Like my children now, their question is, what's the big idea? And they're praying for, like, Daddy, what's the big idea? Right? We must interrogate the thought, especially the ones that we think they are my thoughts, because they might not be your thoughts, they might actually be imitated thoughts. So interrogate the thoughts. Number 4, investigate the thoughts. And one of the ways in which you investigate the thoughts, and Doc touched on it earlier, think about the 5 closest people to you. So that's possibly your spouse, your business partner, a spiritual leader, coach, mentor, guide, your best friend, and then maybe somebody that's owing you money. Or you're owing money, as the case may be, right? So think about those 5 people. One of the things that you know about those 5 people is that whether you like it or not, certain aspects of their lives will rub off on you. Certain aspects of their lives. It could be the way they think, their approach to matters, the emotional weight they attribute to certain things. So, for example, I'm not a TV person. And so when we got married and all of that, I didn't used to watch TV and all. My wife was not really a TV person, but she used to see a lot of movies. So initially, at the beginning of our relationship, I never thought about going to the cinema. I never thought about, going out, but she always wanted to do that, right? So what we currently do is we're still not TV people, right? But I make it a point of duty that if my wife is watching a series and she likes it, at some point, either at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, let's watch this one. And I'll be putting the ginger and all of that, the salt, and really catching on. So over time, because it's important to her and she's important to me, it becomes important to me, right? So certain things that have become important to us were never important to us, but they became important because of people that were important. So when you think about the 5 closest people to you, investigate their values and their ideals. Why? Because a part of their values, ideals, and thoughts will soon become your contemplation. And this is why it was Jim Rohn that said it first, that your life is going to be the aggregate of the 5 closest people to you. So if you have 5 smart people close to you, you'll be the 6th. If you have 5 rich people closest to you, you'll be the 6th. If you have 5 poor people close to you, you will be the 6th. So whatever you have around you, you're likely going to take the partner. So investigate, ask the questions about that. Why did my dad's business fail when I was 18? What was happening to him? What's going around? What's going on with his health? Why was uncle so-and-so admitted in the hospital, and the second uncle and the third uncle? Were there certain thinking patterns that produced certain lifestyle choices that produced maybe a lackadaisical attitude to exercise or dieting or hygiene or whatever it is? Investigate the thought. Why do I always run out of money by the 22nd? Why? I thought it was an economy thing, but I moved to Australia and I was still run out of money by the 22nd. I thought it was a Nigerian economy. But an alligator in Nigeria will not become a crocodile in London, right?
No.
And the fact that you're in New Zealand does not mean you have New Zeal in the land.
Well, I like this, man.
Right? So we've got to investigate the thoughts. If you're afraid of marriage, why are you afraid of marriage? Investigate the thoughts. If you're scared of interviews, like every time you have an interview, you go like, oh, can I have a preview instead of the interview? Investigate the thought. Why are you scared of examinations? Examine the thought. Ask questions. When did it start? When did I start feeling like this? So some people say, I used to be a bright child in secondary school. I was so smart, right? I was an all-age student. And I don't know what happened. Investigate the thought, right? Number 5, which is a very good one, is that thoughts can be interrupted. So this COVID season and all of that, many people are dealing with fear. Like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. That's going to happen and all. You can interrupt a thought. Now, think about thoughts like this. I mentioned earlier, think about thoughts like the spermatozoans of a man. Now, you have the spermatozoans of a man, right? But guess what? The fact that the man is fertile or virile, and the fact that the woman is fertile as well, or in that season of the month where she can conceive, does not mean a baby must happen. There are contraceptives. So you must have mental contraceptives. So that when the wrong organs are about to impregnate your mind, right? The wrong infrastructure, wrong news, wrong elements, wrong doctrine, wrong theology, wrong psychology, wrong philosophy are about to domicile, right, in the womb of your mind, and you're about to, you can use contraceptives. And so there are certain contraceptives like thoughts, counter thoughts. So you can have a thought, you can have a counter thought. So for example, if you ever think about, oh my God, COVID is going to happen, you can have a counter thought. And the counter thought could be, oh, you know what? COVID is not going to happen to me. In fact, I'm going to look for a way to donate to an isolation center. Is a counter thought. If I'm going to look for a way to ensure that anyone who's been through COVID, I'm going to send them a note of encouragement or something. That's a counter thought. By that, you are repositioning yourself mentally from being a victim or a potential victim or a potential carrier to becoming a caregiver, right? It's a counter thought. So you have an idea, oh my God, maybe I'm gonna die single. You know, many ladies have that fear once they are 26, 27, 28. Oh my God, I'm gonna die single. I should have stuck with the last boyfriend who was slapping me once every 3 months, you know, and all of that. A counter thought is, no, I'm happily married. I'm carrying my babies and we're together as a family. It's a counter thought. And I love what Dr. Niyi said earlier. You don't need to perceive it. In other words, you might not have Victoria, I see you. Thank you so much. So you might not have the wedding gown, you might not have the wedding date, even though, you know, those things are important, but you have a counter thought in your mind, and the counter thought is see yourself married, see yourself thriving, doing well, flourishing in your own home. It's a counter thought. You're thinking about this thought, oh, you're gonna die, and you're 35. See yourself at 56. See yourself playing with your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren at 80, right? See yourself. Have a counter thought mechanism, right? Now, in case you don't have the contraceptive, right? You can have the spermicide. Come on. You can have the morning after pill. That means it's sat in your subconscious mind, but you can flush it out. You can evacuate it. I'm not talking about abortion, the natural, but you can abort the seed of negativity. You can do it, right? With the power of thoughts. Please listen to this. If those thoughts that are negative are strong enough to concoct or distort your internal environment, then it means positive thoughts are equally strong to be able to reconfigure your environment and disposition, right? Now, number 6 is that thoughts can be inspired. Thoughts can be inspired. So number 1, they can be initiated. Number 2, they can be imitated. Number 3, they can be interrogated. Number 4, they can be investigated. Number 5, they can be interrupted. Number 6, they can be inspired. Thoughts can be inspired. And that's why this series is so powerful, because as we're speaking now, thoughts have been inspired. People are getting ideas. People are like, oh my God, I never knew this. Or I knew this, but I forgot it because of the business of life. Or I knew this, but I stopped believing at some point. And so this is like a wake-up call. So let's think about how thoughts can be inspired. I stumbled on this book. I think I was 17 at the time. It was called Awaken the Giant Within You by Tony Robbins. It changed my life. So that was when I became exposed to limiting beliefs, the power of thoughts, and all of those kind of things, and how your brain-mind-body connection affects your life and all. I was 17 years old. And you know something? Tony Robbins wrote that book. He published it at the age of 24. Unknowingly to me, in my mind, a benchmark was established. Guess when I published my first book? Guess how old I was when I published my first book? 24. That thought was inspired because I was like, oh my God, that book was big. It was about 300 and something, almost 400 pages. The biggest book, I think the biggest book I've ever read at one time in my life. So thoughts can be inspired. I remember one time, many years ago, my pastor said to me, he was walking out, somebody gave him $1,000, right? $1,000. Someone just, walked in. Do you know what had happened to me? About 18 months later. Why? Because thoughts can be inspired. One of my friends said to me, somebody gave me some millions of naira. Do you know what had happened to me? About 2 to 3 years after he told me. Why? Because thoughts can be inspired. One of my mentors said, I went to do a training and I was paid 7 digits for it. Do you know what had happened to me? About 3 years later. This is why it's important to not only watch the company you keep, but also watch the company your mind keeps. Watch the company your mind keeps. So watch your eye gates. They're inlets to the mind, the chamber of your thoughts. I'm going to wrap it up now so Doc can also say some things, right? So watch your eye gates. Your eyes are absorbing massive streams of information. I was listening to Andrew Huberman a couple of weeks ago, and he said something, and I think Doc can confirm this for us. He said that the eyes are actually part of the central nervous system.
Absolutely.
Right? That the eyes are actually part of the CNS, but they were pushed out of the skull, right? So that your eyes are literally part of your brain. My God. Yeah. That means that your eyes are primarily for.
Absolutely. The retina is actually an extension of a nerve cell. So the connection from your eyes to your brain, it's not peripheral. It's still considered as part of the central nervous system.
Can you imagine? So what I watch literally governs my life. Now, one research says that 89% of the information we absorb, right, actually comes through visual perception, about 89%. About visual perception. So that means that the things I'm watching, what am I looking at? That's why you even have to limit the kind of negative news or the kind of mainstream media you consume, because those thoughts are being transplanted. And so you want to get inspiring thoughts. You want to have pictures around you that speak to what you want to see. I think it was Bishop Edekpo that said, Bishop was the one that said, what you don't want, you don't watch, right? What you don't want, you don't watch. Why? I'll put it this way. Whatever you watch eventually becomes a watchman in your life. And what does a watchman do? The watchman determines what has access, right? So if I'm watching news about negativity and crisis and tension and this one, someone is asking what's the CNS? CNS is central nervous system. Sorry about that.
Yes.
About technology. Central nervous system. Right? So when I'm watching will eventually determine what watches me or who watches me or what sees me, right? And the number 7, I'll say that thoughts can be implanted. So thoughts can be implanted. And this is where cultural transformation happens. That I can actually govern the atmosphere of my family, the atmosphere of my home, the atmosphere of my organization by understanding the 7 things and then implanting those thoughts. Now, there are all kinds of, methodologies like auto-suggestion, like direct inquisition, like interviews, like instructions and all. But many of the most effective things, ongoing transfers that happen through conversations, which is why what we're doing is so powerful. Which means a mode of learning is I can actually write out 7 things, bullet points, and have a whiteboard thing. That's a mode of learning. But then there's also this mode of learning where it's more interactive, it's a bit more casual. People are just enjoying themselves. And they're absorbing volumes of information that's literally transforming their lives, right? So these are a couple of these are the 7 things I want to keep in mind. Before I allow Doc to say something, let me put this out there as well. If my thoughts are seeds and my womb, right, and my mind rather is a womb, I can determine what kind of people I am intimate with, because through intimacy, seeds are transferred. Through intimacy, ideas are transferred. Innovation can be transferred. Creativity can be sharpened. You talked about collective thinking earlier, shared thinking, group thinking earlier, right? Where the collective thinking of the room actually becomes my own convictions without me knowing. This is of masterminds or group coaching circles and communities and clusters. Why? Because I can displace all the negative thoughts by constant exposure and constant interaction with the shared thinking of that room. Let me just stop there for
Absolutely. Wow. Amazing. And I like the way you just broken that down, P-Dams, talking about how thoughts can be initiated, imitated, interrogated, investigated. By the way, investigated, something, happened yesterday, with my mom. I'm not sure whether my mom is watching right now. She was telling me the story of somebody about how, things were not working for that person and blah, blah, blah. The summary of it all was that this was a spiritual attack. In fact, if you hear that story, it's worse than any, I don't know how you can put that in a movie. It's like this person must be the most unfortunate person ever. This one happened, that one happened, this one happened, that one happened. At the time I said, Mom, do you know that the first thing that comes to mind is that this person probably has bipolar? That's the first thing that occurred to my mind. I think this person actually needs a psychiatrist. And a lot of all these things are paranoid delusions. So for every single thing, and I said, have you corroborated the story from anyone else? Have you investigated? No. So you've only heard from this person who I believe, in my mind, just hearing the story, is paranoid and everybody's against them and this one is against them and everything that happens to them, So this person, may need, it's not everything requires fasting and prayer. Sometimes some people just require good old, conversations and counseling and probably psychotherapy. And that's just the reality. So you got to investigate, you've got to interrupt. You can interrupt thoughts. Thoughts can be inspired and implanted. Now, I want us to go to another dimension, P-Dams, and I'll get your take on this as well. about how we can use thoughts to change our brain. How can we use thoughts to change our brain? And of course, by changing our brain, how we can use the power of thoughts, or unleash the power of thoughts to change our brain, because that's what this is all about: rewiring our brain, renewing our mind, and changing our world. I'm going to lay a foundation as well for that, and see what you think about this. Now, based on all that we've talked about thoughts in the last 45, 50 minutes, we now know that thoughts can be spontaneous, like a pop-up thing on your. I remember those days when we didn't have pop-up blockers, and stuff would just come up on your email. You'll be there when you say Christian brother scream, that kind of thing. So so thoughts can actually pop up spontaneously because you're always thinking. You've got hundreds of thousands of thoughts going through your brain every single day, from what you're going to eat, who you're going to talk to, what shirt are you going to wear, different things. So those are spontaneous reflexive thoughts. All right. But then there's another dimension of thoughts, which is deliberate and intentional, which is when it's just like you have your internet browser. When you deliberately go to a page to study, or maybe you go on Facebook intentionally trying to write a post, that is completely different than something just popping up. Now, let me explain this to you. Every time you deliberately think a thought, or you bring up something, or you meddle or reflect on a new idea, there are certain circuits in your brain that are switched on. Every time you do that. So basically, every time you focus on a thought, you change your brain in particular ways. The problem then is that how can we really actualize this, and how can we actually enhance the power of the brain? Now, I would mention the word plasticity. A lot of people probably would have heard, if you've not heard it before, plasticity from plastic, which means change. So basically what that means is that our brain changes through experience. So our brains are designed to change, and in fact, from the age of 0 to 25, the brain changes rapidly, and a lot of the changes that occur from the brain is through experience. Do you understand? Now, my kids were born here in Australia. If you hear my kids speak on the phone, you would think he's a white boy. All right. Now, I live, you can hear my own accent that I'm a, typical Igbo Taku man, born and bred in Lagos. All right. This is me. I've lived in this country for 12 years now. Okay. So, but my son's brain has just picked up the way people speak, the experiences, and his brain has adjusted to that. That's why it's easy for a child to learn 3 languages and be fluent in 3 languages without an accent. All right, because that first 22 decades of life, the brain is changing, absorbing stuff at a rapid rate. That's why after the age of 25, it's difficult for you to learn a musical instrument, or difficult for you to learn a new language. Why is it difficult? Let me put it this way. Now, and if you, I recommend this man, Andrew Huberman. I think Peter's mentioned him. He's a professor from Stanford University and a neurobiology professor. He's done a lot of work on the neuroscience of thought and the mind. And I will just mention 2 things here that would help you understand this. Every time you generate a new thought, that thought activates certain parts of your brain and releases chemicals that activates the brain. The chemicals activate the brain and marks parts of your brain that require reinforcement or change. So if you decide to learn a new technique, let's say you want to learn a new musical instrument, there are 2 ways you can reinforce that and make that work. Number 1, focus, and number 2, urgency. Focus basically means that you deliberately, intentionally decide to blur everything else in the background and put all of your attention to something. You see, our brain is usually multitasking, doing so many things at all times. But every time you focus on a new idea and you deliberately say, yes, I want to focus on this. So let's assume that you're having problems with negative thoughts and you poor self-esteem, but you decide that, you know what, I'm going to start using positive affirmations and I want to focus on this positivity. Every time you decide to do that deliberately, circuits in your brain are switched on. And the more you do that, the more you maintain that focus, the more those circuits are reinforced over and over and over again. Now, the problem is that the way our brains are wired to be naturally relaxed. The brain doesn't want to exert too much energy or focus on something. And so maintaining that focus is always the issue. Now, the second point I'll mention there, apart from focus, is urgency. Usually, when you have a thought that is attached to a need, it stimulates the brain much more rapidly than just any other thought. All right. So if you have a thought that, okay, you know what, how can I bring this, technology? How can I help people bring the computer into their palms? That's a thought. Once you start thinking about that, and even if you don't have the answers and you just keep reflecting on that, it expands the brain. The brain diverts all its resources to reinforcing that circuit. So if you want to change the way you behave, you want to change the way you feel, you want to change the way you do things, these two key principles are very important. Learning the ability to focus on a thought and reflect on the thought over and over again. That's number one. And understanding the urgency that is attached to thoughts. When thoughts are attached to a real need, all right, the brain is switched on. And by reflecting on that over and over again, you recreate parts of your brain, you rewire parts of your brain, and that's how you can practically, change the way you think. And now, and that happens at the biological level, all right? And not just at the biological level, but that is also going to be a real life experience, especially when you're an adult. So if you want to learn a new behavior, start a new thing, two key things you will need. You need to be able to decide what is the real purpose of this, what's the outcome, what is the need of this. And that's where the inspiration comes from. God gives you an idea about something. You start thinking about it. What is it supposed to achieve? Once you identify the real need and you focus on it and you're deliberate about that, you will notice that your brain will start to change in that direction. And that's how you can form a new habit. That's how you can pick up a new language. That's how you can develop a new skill. It's quite possible. Now, the reason why it's difficult is because your brain is not wired, once you're over the age of 25, to learn anything new. Your brain is designed that for the first 20 years of your life, you acquire as much as you can and then just reinforce what you already know. But to unlearn and to learn something new takes a lot more effort from the brain. And that's only possible through focus and urgency. Peter, what do you think about that? Peter?
Very powerful and very necessary. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I think there was a bit of a glitch there.
Are we? All right.
Yes.
Yeah. So I said what you said is so powerful and so important for us to make. It's so powerful. And there's so many thoughts that's inspired in my head. So depending on what data you're using, they say that human beings entertain somewhere between 40,000 and 60,000 thoughts every day. 40,000 to 60,000 ideas or thoughts every day. Like you mentioned, some of them are, just very mundane, ordinary, basic stuff, and others are maybe like decisions. But what they discovered is that over 90% of those thoughts are the same kind of thoughts, which then therefore explains why most lives don't change. In fact, I saw a tweet some months ago. This guy is a financial expert, all of that, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna just tell everybody here now, if you marry somebody who's over 25 years, don't expect them to change. He said they're already fully focused on their ways. And his tweet, I don't think he meant it that way, but it carried such a very cynical and pessimistic air around it. And I said, well, I get what it's saying, but I don't completely agree. Because if what is saying is true, what's the point of therapists? What's the point of training and teaching? What's the point of spiritual impartation and guidance? What's the point of life coaching and all of that? But the truth of the matter, purely from the scientific aspect.
Yeah, you're back now. You're back now. We lost you a little bit there, but you're back.
All right. Okay, then it's most likely right. However, we don't want to despair, and we don't want to be of the lot of people say, sorry, there's nothing I can do to change it. There is something called the power of self-determination, which I think is one of the gifts that God has given human beings, right? And which is that you can actually decide to a large extent what the outcomes and the experiences and results of your life would be. That in fact, you can actually decide what your experience of a certain perception would be. And that this is possible by training, right? A dimension of it is possible by willpower, but a different dimension by training. So someone did a research about why the Kenyans and the Ethiopians just generally seemed to win the long distance races, right? At the Olympics or IAAF and all these kind of things, sporting events. These guys will literally win almost all the long race events. And this is a researcher and saw that, see, most of them grew up, the terrain in which they grew up, the topography here, where they grew up, predisposed them to daily training. It was part of it. I mean, like what somebody in the temperate areas, temperate regions would have to go to a certain exotic landmass to explore. They grew up in that environment. And so what they actually said was that through generations of training and the impact of that on their bodies and their lungs, actually, their ability to breathe at a greater capacity than most people, even their physical form had somewhat evolved to be able to accommodate the pressure that comes with running for a long time. Now, Dr. Niyi talked about plasticity. So I think there's the whole buzz around neuroplasticity and all of that. That's the same way you can actually train your muscles to lift certain dumbbells. So this is January. Most people had the New Year's resolution. I'm going to be fit. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to lose this one bag and have 6-pack. I'm going to have my muscles. I'm going to have my muscles back and all of that. So if I roll at the gym, I'm going to run the treadmill, skip 300 or 400 times, lift 10 kg and do 20 reps. Now, the moment you start doing those reps, 10 kg on each hand, the first day, it will be as if you're going to die. Your muscles are going to hurt. Fire is going to be burning. And if you drop those weights, what happens is there is no growth. There's no plasticity or change in the muscle power. But if you're able to lift it, then guess what happens? There's reinforcement. And then the muscles become or begin to evolve in their plasticity. Maybe that's not the word, but they begin to stretch to accommodate the ability to carry more weight. And I think that's how, like you explained earlier, the neural patterns work. So how do you change? I think that for me, I'm going to start from the place of visualization, right? Because the me I see is the me I'll be. There has to be visualization. There must be pictures around me that reiterate that possibility. Now, there's a story in the Bible about how Jacob, wanted to increase his flock and all of that. And so he took certain animals to a body of water, stripped certain stems, and he caused those animals to actually focus on those things whilst they were reproducing, whilst they were mating. Now, don't forget what I said earlier. When you're thinking, you're actually conceiving. So what you place in front of your eyes when you're in a productive season of concentration will determine what you carry in your heart. Many times you have to see it first, right, before you can handle it. So visualization is so important. That's intentionally focusing on the pictures of what you want, not the pictures of what you don't want. Let me prove something to you. Most human beings are more driven by what they don't want, more inspired by what they don't want. So, for example, if you are, let me speak to those who are believers, right? If you're a believer, you go to a camp meeting, convention, crusade, church service, and they say it's time to praise God. Thank God for what He has done for you. Thank God for your eyes, your hands, your ability to walk, to smell, to see, to taste, to handle, to reproduce, and all. People will be praying under their breath. Then when they say it's time for you to deal with every demon you no longer want to see in your life, guess what happens? The voices rise, the temperatures increase, the passion goes to another level. Why? Because as humans, we tend to be more devoted to what we don't want than what we do want. Are you seeing that now?
Yes,
so you have to train yourself to be louder about what you want than what you don't want. And so visualization is one of those. And that's where things like vision board come in, mental maps are coming, mind maps coming, the things that help you, models, mentors, training programs, products. Travel is a part of it. Adventure is a part of it. Experiences, exploration is a part of it. Visiting wealthy environments is a part of it. Sitting in world-class lounges is a part of it. Flipping through glossy magazines, feeling the texture of the magazine, smelling the publication, want to be a best-selling author is a part of it, right? So visualization and exposure. You want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to just say something there about very quickly about that key thing, visualization and visual focus, because visual focus actually precedes mental focus. And in fact, in the development of the brain, you know, I used to look at my son, for example, whom I'm using an example, he's still sleeping right now. You know, when he was growing up earlier, and this is common for everybody, including us, when you ask him to add 3 plus 3, what will he do? He has to visualize it. He will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because at the level of his brain development, he needs to see it in order for him to think it.
Come on.
All right, because that visual focus produces a mental focus. When he does this over and over and over again, he doesn't need to do it anymore. But if you ask me to do 3 plus 3, I can say it automatically because I've done it over and over time. But if you ask me to do 835 times 835 without a calculator, I will have to write it down. All right, because it's difficult for me to track. Okay, 5 times 5, 25. Put 5 down. Put 2. Okay, by the time I do all of that math, all right, mentally, I will be going crazy. But if I will be faster writing it down. Okay, I'm putting it down. So that's why it's very important when we have complex ideas and complex thoughts to write and put it down, make it clear. Because when you see it, it helps you with your ability to absorb and focus on it. But when it's not written down and you cannot visualize it, focus is very difficult, especially when it's something new. It's different from, you see, we're not talking here about what is reflective on what we're used to. If you're having a new idea, a new thought, an imagination that is something that is groundbreaking, you've got to be able to visualize that new world, that new life. Because if you can't see it, it's difficult to actually think it. Sorry, Peter, I'm saying.
Come on. It's so powerful. That's so powerful. And, you know, I'm thinking about how we even learn as human beings. Like you mentioned earlier, you go to a primary school or nursery school, and guess what you see? Pictures, right? A for ant or A for apple, B for ball. Now they say A and Ba and all those, the sound the letters now, right? But they have all those pictures there. Now, as we grow, we begin to think, oh, all those pictures and all things are not necessary. But the truth is, you are a child at something, right? You're a child at something. So if you're like me and you're looking to make your first $1 million, you haven't made your first $1 million yet. I'm a child at that. I haven't made it yet. So I'm a child at making $1 million. Right? if you want, you want to give out your first house, not the house you want to give out. You're a child at that. The same way you learned the nursery rhymes by looking at pictures and you reinforced those concepts by looking at pictures, assume your status as a child at those achievements, those new things, and then surround yourself with images that speak about those things, that reinforce those things, and validate the possibilities of those outcomes and results, and throw yourself there. The second thing I'm going to share for time's sake is this. We have to put ourselves on a routine. We have to put ourselves on a routine. So if it's visual focus, if it's concentration, if it's visualization, if it's affirmations, if it's declarations, if it's, the technologies that we have to transform our minds, then it must be on a routine. Now, you think about nature and you see that nature, the earth has survived thousands of years, right? And there's a routine. The earth has a routine. It's on an axis. It turns around every 24 hours. It's predictable. And now because it's predictable, it's sustainable, right? Yes. It's predictable, therefore it's sustainable. Like you didn't wake up today and say, no lights, where's the sun? That would be an eclipse. And eclipses are part of nature, but they are not a daily occurrence, right? So every time you can have an eclipse in your routine, but you need a routine. This, copyright this for me. You need a routine to find your roots in. Right? So you need a routine. So time those things, right? If you're trying to get better numbers, what's your training routine for numbers? There's some app games, right? They can download some that I use. Don't know Elevate, Elevate.
Yep.
The app, a brain gym app, Elevate. Yeah, there's one called Peak, Peak. So these are games that help your mind. They help you in focus and concentration and memory, in coordination. They help in just basic things that help the brain and the mind work. So you can get some of those apps, get some of those things. You want to get better with the mind? Who are you listening to? Right? You can say, I want to get better with changing my life with my mind, and then you're always watching comedy and cartoons and dancing cats and clowns and all of that. Now, I'm not saying don't be jovial and humorous. I mean, like, I laugh a lot, but I'm also very serious. A lot of people don't know how serious I tend to be, right? Because I'm generally very jovial and all. But you've got to mix these things up and then schedule that. Anything that is important to you, make it a part of your routine. A daily routine, right? Able to tell me what's priority to you. In fact, your daily routine is a picture of your priorities, actually. Yes. Your daily routine is a picture of your priorities. Now, your priorities are a picture of your possibilities, right? And your reality will always find its frame within the pictures of your possibilities. So your routines actually paint the picture of your reality.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. We can go on and on and on and on. But I think we've got to sort of stop it there and see if we can take one or two questions. Guys, I don't know, what you've gained from this, but I have gained a whole lot about thoughts and, I just need to remind you those last two key things that PDAM's talked about: visualization and routine. Someone said the secret of your future is hidden in your daily routine. I heard that when I was in first year medical school, actually. The secret of your future is hidden in your daily routine. Successful people do daily what unsuccessful people do once in a while. And that's just key. The reason why you become very good at something is if you do it over and over again. And that still goes back to science. That still goes back to the way the brain is wired. Once you achieve that sense of focus and you keep doing it over and over again, you will reinforce those circuits in your brain and you become very good at it. So let me see if you've got questions, please. If you have questions, there's an opportunity right now. We'll just take one or two questions before we round up. So please, guys, put it on the chat. Let me know what you think about this. Let's know what do you think about what PDAMS has said and how has it impacted your life. Yes, we're getting a few comments now. Someone said I gained a lot. Wow, great, awesome. Yes. All right. Victoria says my note is filled already. Thank you so much. Routine. Beautiful. Marvin Comey, the secret of your future is hidden in your daily. Yes, absolutely. Put that down. The secret of your future. And PDAMS has even expanded it. Your routine is a picture of your priorities, and your priorities frame your possibilities. And your possibilities are, how did he say, connected with reality? They're connected to your reality. So wonderful. This is indeed great. Wow, that's it. All right, so this is a question. How can I read and learn faster? How can I read and learn faster? We have that. I think we've got one or two questions. We'll just take that. How can I read and learn faster? I'm not sure whether PDAMS, you want me to take this, or is that okay?
Yeah, you can, because my response is going to be very simple. Jim Quick.
Yes. Follow Jim Quick.
The guy called Jim Quick is a memory guy. Jim Quick, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Is a memory super brain guy, and also I think if you take a course by to help.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jim Quick, yes, on Instagram. Yeah. Now let me just also chip this in. You see, learning comes from the thought process. Learning comes from the thought process, and there's this part of the brain. I'll bring up my molder now, which is the prefrontal cortex. I'll just take this half a brain. All right. So this part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, and this part of the brain is what helps with new learning. Okay. So there's the emotional part of your brain. Last week I talked about the emotional part of the brain, which is this lower level. All right. But once you want to learn something new, let's say you want to read a difficult text, and you're struggling to do that, I would always encourage people, use your eye energy hours. So you got to find out when am I most productive? For some people, it's 4 a.m. in the morning. For some people, it's 10 p.m. at night, where you can be least distracted. So what happens generally is that when you want to learn something new, this part of the brain is what takes over All right. Now, the problem then is that if you have a difficulty reading or learning something new, you have to make sure that you avoid distractions. You maximize your eye energy and eye efficiency periods, and you break it down into simple tasks. And by breaking down into simple tasks, and and identifying the outcome you want to bring out. Listen, anytime you learn something new, the brain focuses on three things. If you want to start anything new, let's say you want to lose 10 kilograms in weight, your brain would ask three questions. Number one, how long are you going to go for? Number two, what's the path? Number three, what's the outcome? Every time you want to start something new, those are the questions your brain would ask. All right, how long is this going to go for? Now, if you focus on the outcome, which is linked to your reward system in the brain, you will be able to go through. That's why people in marathon runners and all these martial arts people can go through rigorous training, because their focus is on the outcome. So, but when you're looking at the pathway and the difficulty, it becomes much more laborious. So every time you want to read, you have to reinforce that in your mind. What do you see yourself, picture yourself, yes, I'm getting this degree, I'm getting this as an outcome. And when you focus on the outcome, you break it down into simple tasks, and you use your eye energy hours, you will find that very, very useful. But yes, get Jim Quick online. Let's get another question. I hope PDAMs can get this for us. West, Tofumi, do you want to help us with some of these questions? PDAMs, what do you think about this? How do I generate and initiate a thought?
Decision. Yeah. Decision. So I mentioned something about self-determination earlier, which is part of what makes you a human being. You can actually make certain decisions, right? If you see animals, animals need like external stimulus or stimuli to be able to stop themselves from doing certain things, but they can't stop. So like a goat, when they say this guy is a goat, I'm not talking about the greatest of all time, GOAT, but goat. I mean, like, this guy cannot control himself, is stubborn and all of that. But you can decide. So, for example, if you have maybe sexual urges, when a dog has sexual urges, it can't control itself. It needs to move in line with its instincts, its drive, its cravings. Now, a human being may say, no, I can't control myself. I can't control myself. But guess what? If the person you're trying to express your urges with now tells you, oh, sorry, I've got STDs or HIV or something, then all of a sudden you're reminded of your ability to control yourself, which means that you actually could have controlled yourself before, but you just didn't have enough leverage or reason, motivation, motive for action, motivation to be able to make that decision. So decide, just like you can say, this year I'm going to be studying wealth, or I'm going to be studying the top 10 people, richest people in the world, or this year I'm going to be learning about building a business. You can just decide and pick that topic and say, I'm devoting the next 1 week to learn about this. It also helps in time of a lot of people struggle in the area of prayer. I'm using spiritual example right now because somebody might actually need it. So how do I get a prayer? Looks like a time, right? But then split to 15 minutes, right? 15 minutes of Thanksgiving, 15 minutes of praying for yourself and your family, 15 minutes of praying for the world and this COVID issue, 15 minutes for praying for specific friends and family members. All of a sudden, like Doc was saying, there is a path and there's an outcome. You're able to chunk it out. You can actually also structure your week, right? So I have different assignments for every day of the week. So Sunday is almost entirely church, and there's some other stuff in the evening. Monday is primarily rest and family and just reflecting, reviewing, recharging. Tuesday is more business. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are largely business, right? Wednesday, there's a lot of ministry stuff there as well. And then Friday, there's a lot of ministry stuff as well. Saturday, events, seminars, and all of that. So you can structure your week as well. And then even the days of the week can actually have an assignment. So you can say Monday, Monday Mondays. So you're studying about Monday on Monday. Sorry, you're studying about money on Mondays. Yeah. Tuesdays could be about relationships. Wednesdays could be about whatever. You can do it. You're a human being. I hope that helps somebody.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, PDAMs. Tofumi, any more questions?
Yes. Judith is asking that for those who live in an environment where they don't have people or superheroes to imitate, what can they do? And what if they can't leave that environment?
Peter, do you want to give it a go?
So, do you want me to respond to that? Should I respond to that?
Yes.
All right. So maybe I should reframe it. You actually don't need any superhero. You just need models, mentors, guides, inspirers. I think that sometimes we overestimate the people that we need in our lives, the kinds of people that we think we need in our lives. So let me give you an example. If you want to improve a certain aspect of your life, you don't necessarily have to study somebody who is like 20 years older and 30 years gone, who's gone 30 years ahead of you. You could look at a friend, right? So maybe you're trying to work on your punctuality and look at your friend who's always punctual, who's a better time manager, who's more respectful when it comes to scheduling and all of that. And then ask him certain questions, study him. So in that area, he becomes a mentor in that area. It does not necessarily mean that your mentor has to be like super smart, extraordinarily intelligent and all of that. So keep that in mind. What you could also do is that you can learn from people online, take their online courses, attend their virtual summits like this one, a weekly event for 8 weeks. You can be a part of this, right? And then in terms of, I think the other thing was environment. You don't have to leave your location to change your environment. So there are people, let me give you an example. So I was, my wife and I went to Maldives last 2 years ago for our anniversary, our 5th anniversary. We went to Maldives. So on our way back, we were at the airport. We're going to travel through Qatar and all of that. We're at the airport, and I saw this, a sales girl, beautiful girl, lovely girl, and very well spoken. Now we're in Maldives, about to leave, but she sounded super British. Like, and I lived in London for a couple of years, so I'm able to pick out the accents and the different grades of the accent. You get, I can pick out the British Nigerian accent. I can pick out the like Scottish, the Irish sort of. So she was speaking like a premium Queen's English. Sounds like, oh my goodness, you must have schooled in England. And she's like, nope. I was like, okay, really? So you must have maybe England. Nope. Were you born in England? Nope. So you've never been to England? I said, nope. I said, so how come you sound so British? She said that she binge watches Harry Potter. Wow. And she literally absorbs everything in Harry Potter. Everything. So she's living in the Maldives, which is about 10 hours. Because first time I went to Maldives, went from London, it was about 14 hours, about 11 hours, I think. So about 11 hours, right, away. She never stepped her foot in England, but her environment, her mental diet was British. And so what she released from her mouth, because what goes in, garbage in, garbage out, British in, British out, right? So she was feeding her brain with British stuff. And she was speaking like that. If you feed your mind with intelligence, financial intelligence, what comes out of your mouth is going to be that. If you feed your mind with growing businesses, great leadership, what's going to come out of your mouth, and by your mouth, not just your physical mouth, the orifices of your life, the expressions of your life, the manifestations of the things that you do will operate at a result that is very close to what you've been feeding yourself with.
Well, that's it. We've got to keep feeding ourselves with the right thing. You've got to keep feeding yourselves with the right thing. And, and I think that's one of the great things about thoughts, actually, that remember, thoughts do not necessarily require contact, and that you can actually generate thoughts. It goes back to how do you generate thoughts? One of the ways we talked about there was inspiration and all that. It's true that we can feed our minds through what we perceive. All right, but then you can actually generate thoughts even without any contact. And to also extend it to what Peter has just said now, you can actually, some of the people that have exerted the greatest influence on my life are people I've never met. All right, of course, I've never met them directly. Some of them have even passed away. I remember the first book that I read, Christian literature that changed my life, A.W. Tozer, The Pursuit of God. That book changed my life. A.W. Tozer was long dead before I even came to know the Lord. But that book transformed my life. All right. So you can have contact with people, without actually being in their space, but through their literature, through their online courses, and through their products, you can still be inspired to sort of a higher level of living. Tofumi, maybe we'll take one final question. Any more? Last one.
Okay, so I think we can actually combine these two. So someone's asking, how do I increase or enhance concentration? And what do I do when I get bored with routines?
Wow, that's amazing. Now, let me explain why you're bored with routine. I get PDAMs to see whether PDAMs can, put this there. Now, you're bored with routine because the routine is not natural. It's not reflexive. Remember that I said that your brain likes to operate in a cruisy autopilot kind of thing. That's why it's a lot easier for you just to wake up, go to work, come back, wake up, go to work, come back. There's no challenge. You walk, you go online, you see Dams or Dami Oluwatoyinbo talking, like, what are they talking about again? You move on to another comedian on Instagram and everything. It's you don't want to spend your energy. You're tired at 10 o'clock, you're back from work. You don't want to start listening to Niyi Borire talking about the brain. You prefer to just watch Brother Shaggy, and laugh and dance. Yeah, it's a lot easier to do that. So the brain likes the path of least resistance once you're an adult, because habits are formed, experiences are already wired, all of those things are there. So it's a lot harder. Now, let me explain this to you. Every time you concentrate, there are two systems that are activated in your brain: the stress system and the focus system. The stress system, both of them are mediated by hormones at the same time. The stress system is actually activated to improve alertness. So you have adrenaline pumping into your body to open your eye, your pupils are dilated. You can focus on the text, you're alert. But that's not sustainable because the stress system is there and the focus system is there. The stress system is meant to build alertness. The focus system is then meant to blur the background, like your DSLR camera. Blur the background and help you identify that single thing you want to concentrate on. And that's mediated through acetylcholine, which is a different hormone. The problem there is that a lot of us cannot bring down that stress system. Because when that stress system goes and we have a lot of adrenaline there, it makes everything tedious. After a while, you can't just, keep up going with it. So if it's a routine that you're just newly forming the routine, it's difficult to maintain. And the only way you can maintain it is through the reward system of the brain, which is what I was talking about, the outcome. Okay, so what do I want to get out of this routine? Let me tell you, when I was doing my PhD, all right, and I'll be very brief with this, I knew I wanted to do this because it was groundbreaking research, but I had to wake up early in the morning because my patients were dialysis patients. Dialysis starts at 7 a.m. I have to be at the hospital grounds at 6 a.m. That means, and I lived 1.5 hours away from the hospital. So that means I have to wake up 4 o'clock before, and I still have to go to work. I was working full time and I was a full-time PhD student. I had 2 jobs. I was a hustler. I was working full time in the hospital. I had an after-hours work that was just like a money maker, and then I was also a full-time PhD student, all at the same time. So, what was even much more difficult for me was that I had to wake up in the morning, make sure I beat traffic. So I'm at the hospital grounds before 6. I will now go into my car, lay down for 20 minutes. Those kind of that 20 minutes is gold. Sleep for 20 minutes. Wake up, bring up all my equipment, go out, and I kept doing this week after week. It was hard. What kept me going was the picture that one day this is going to be groundbreaking research. Let me tell you, do you know that about 6 months later, when we wrote the initial paper, it was, wow, this is great. 1 year later, I was published in an international magazine. Within 18 months, I won an award. I became the 3rd Australian to win this award, the Goldset Prize in America. They flew me all the way to Phoenix, Arizona, business class, to come and present this same research. All right, that took me, that I was killing myself, but it was the outcome. Let me tell you, I saw it. I remember driving and I'm almost snoring on the wheel. I saw myself standing before people talking about what I was doing. I pictured it. I imagined it. I saw myself doing it. It kept me going. It became difficult, but it kept me going. So if you want to sustain a routine, what is the outcome? As I said, anytime you start something new, the brain wants to answer the question, how long is this for? What's the pathway? What's the outcome? If your outcome is not well defined and you're doing it because everybody is doing it, you're doing it because you're of status. If there is no real need, it's not going to be sustainable. All right. So I'm not sure whether I've answered that question. P-Dams, you want to say something?
I think you've answered it so well.
Great. Fantastic there. Well, wow. Oh, gosh, this question, how do we prevent or delete negative thoughts? I think we've talked about that. P-Dams has talked about counter thoughts. Okay, that's how. There was a time in my life I was struggling with negative thoughts. And those thoughts would be just thoughts of seeing people, die. Those thoughts will just come from anywhere. Okay, see people die. The way you counter that, certainly you can actually, use the mental contraceptive or, to get rid of that. And what I find useful is positive affirmations. Very, very important. If you're a believer, the word of God is powerful. The word of God is powerful. By revealing and meditating on the word, by reflecting on the word and allowing the word, sink into you. I used to have problems with some of these addictive sins where, what helped me was the word. I memorized the whole of Romans chapter 6 to chapter 8. I'm telling the truth. Memorized it. And I just kept saying it. I kept saying it. And I kept seeing myself. When the scripture says, now I'm going scriptural now, when the Bible says, reckon yourselves, it's saying, see yourself in that light. So if you have something that is pulling you down all the time, see yourself. It starts with the mind. Start to see yourself that I'm not there anymore. I don't consider yourself as being dead to that thing. I don't belong there anymore. You have to start seeing yourself that way. And the more you focus and concentrate on that part of you, you certainly will be able to harness the grace in that. Any comment about this? I know this is stretching it. P-Dams, I know you got to go. Do you want to say anything about this question?
I think that what you've said is so important, but let me just mention that what I think is a big challenge for many people is, so they're going to hear this, and they would agree and they'll get excited, hopefully share this online and thing. And so I think that at the end of every presentation like this, I don't know if you do it, but just in case we've not been doing it, people need to begin a call to action and an assignment. Okay. So before Bankole speaks next week, what have you done? What have you done? So we need to give them like 2 or 3 to-dos or something like that. Maybe
absolutely.
So your routine. Are you going to write down 3 counter thoughts? Okay. Are you going to investigate one particular thought? Because again, so there was something I discovered, and I think you confirmed this for me, is dopamine, which is the exciting, the feel-good hormone, right? So generally they say that when you accomplish something, that dopamine is part of like your reward hormone. But what they're also discovering is that when your mind is given an assignment, a task, and begin to move in the direction of that assignment, dopamine is released. Is that true as well?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. So part of what will help people here to be able to follow through is, let's take the small steps. What are the small steps? Maybe you're going to take, let's even start with post 3 to 5 things you learned today on Changemakers International. Or what are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do tonight before you sleep? So that we don't end up having all these fantastic ideas without the requisite results or the desired results. I think we just need to be able to put these things to use.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I think that's something we would introduce, and holding people accountable, giving them tasks and breaking it down. Well, we've come to the end of today's session. What a day. Thank you so much, P-Dams. We'll let you go now. You've been a big blessing to us, and we celebrate, appreciate you, and thank you for all that you are and what you're doing. You're such a man of value, and I've learned a lot from you today, and thank you for preparing for this. Like, you've not just come out here to just ramble on and talk from your residual knowledge, but you're intentionally being a blessing to us. So I appreciate you, sir. God bless you, in Jesus' name.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Doc. And so for me, great to meet you. I hope we get to see you again. Bless you. Thank you.
Sister, thank you very much.
All right.
God bless you.
Bye.
Wow, Tofumi, how was that?
Wow.
That's amazing.
I have so
Amazing.
many pages of notes. Wow.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for connecting with us, and I hope you found you got a lot of value there. We're going to send a few things through for all of you who are on our mailing list. We're going to send you some tips and some questions so that we can, remind you of what you've learned today and sort of help you to be able to take those small steps in the right direction. As PDAMs have said, I said we've got to start walking in that right direction so that you can get the best out of this. Now, if you've not joined our group, I want you to go onto Facebook right now. And if you're watching from Facebook, join the group Change Makers International. Change Makers International. There we're going to be sharing a few more things and building up on all of this. So please, that is very important. So tell me what's happening next week. What's happening next week? Next week is going to be special. We have somebody special next week, and that is Bankole Williams. Bankole Williams will be with us next week. Yes, it's going to be special. So it's going to be same time, same time. I'm just trying to bring up an image so maybe I can share my screen. It's going to be same time next week. Same time next week. I want to encourage you, please feel free, invite people and come down here so that you can be with us next week. So same time next week, we're going to be having this. Bankole Williams will be with us, and it's going to be amazing, amazing. We're going to be looking at perception. We talked about perception today as well. How can you study your environment? How can you learn more about your environment? How can you see things? How can you enhance your capacity to pick things from your environment? How do you read people? How can you, read emotions from people's faces? How can you sense, the energy around people? And how can that help your decision making? Very important. So Bankole Williams is a mindset coach, is a NLP, neuro linguistics programming expert. He's going to be here live, and we're going to be dealing with all of this. So please, I want to encourage you to be part of this series next week, Friday, if you're in the UK or Nigeria or in the US, and if you're in Australia, New Zealand, it's going to be Saturday morning, just like today. So thank you. Any last words, Tofumi?
Before we go, we still need to announce the Q&A session happening next week.
Yes, absolutely. So I will be having a question and answer session. Yes, thanks for reminding me. What day are we having it next week?
It's going to be on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Nigerian time.
Yes, so same time on Wednesday, next week, Wednesday, we'll be having a Q&A session. So I'll be answering lots and lots of questions, whether it's on the brain, on the mind, and some of the other questions that you may have. Please join us. It's going to be on Facebook group, Changemakers International. I'll be taking questions, answering those questions live, and it will be a wonderful session. So if you have more questions, please come there on that platform, Changemakers International. If you've not joined the group, as I said, join the group so you get the alert once we go live, and I'll be able to answer a lot of all these questions. All right. So hopefully, you'll continue to get value. So, well, it's been an amazing day, hasn't it been? For me.
Yes, it has. I feel like I need to go and sit down with my notes. Go over them.
Yes. So for those who do not know, Tofumi is my very good friend, my sister, my associate, and she's based. Where is she based? Where are you based?
I'm in Christchurch, New Zealand.
Christchurch, New Zealand. So we've got the Australian and the New Zealand connection. Hey. So, well, thank you all for connecting with us, and thank you so many people. Before we go, just one word, describe what today has been. One word to describe what today has been. We're getting lots of responses here. Oh, thank you, Doctor. It's Borire. Yeah, that's okay. Thanks for the thought-provoking session. Blessings. Thank you, PDAMs. Yeah, PDAMs. Yes, we'll send it. We'll extend the greetings. Yes, God bless. So we're getting lots and lots of positive messages. Tofumi, do you want to read a few more of these messages before we go?
Insightful, great, disruptive. Okay. Mind-blowing.
Yes.
We've got a few more just coming in. Awesome. Time well spent. Revelational and inspirational. It was epic. Mind shift. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Wow,
That's great.
what a session.
Yes, amazing session. So, well, thank you all for being a part of this. So, we will leave you with this wonderful song, Reckless Love. I love the song, it's a powerful song, and I hope you will find it sort of valuable, find it as a big blessing to you. So, until we see you again next week, I wish you the very best and thanks for being with us. So, cheers.